Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today we're doing another little speculation video that I've been wanting to do for a while, but I feel like now's the fitting time to do it. So here we're doing a game that I played and reviewed early on in the channel, just a couple months ago. I can't believe the channel's still quite young, but it's done so much. And here we're going to be looking at Antecessor Humankind Odyssey, some of my thoughts and speculations for the next installment, because Patrice Désilets wanted to make this game into a 3-part trilogy, and the first part covered so much in human evolution. I was wondering where we could go from here. So this is my own little thoughts and speculations on what I think would be cool for the future. So here we start off. Just be aware that there's going to be spoilers for Volume 1, so come back if you want, or after you've played the game, or just do whatever you like. Just be aware that there is spoilers for the first game, because the game you need to go in fresh, because a lot of the enjoyment you get out of that game is learning the systems and stuff. So I recommend, if you don't want any spoilers, stop now. So now we'll be moving on to a recap. So look, this is what happened with Volume 1. We started from 10 million years ago and ended about 2 million years ago, from our split from Pan, or chimps and bonobos, to the beginning of Homo, the genus that our species belongs to. And the apes that we play in order are Sahelanthropus, the first one here. Then we go to Orion, then Ardipithecus, then Australopithecus afarensis, so Lucy, and Africanus, and then we end the game with Homo Egaster. So who's going to be next? So the next species I think will be Homo Erectus, which Egaster is believed to be now a subspecies of. So Homo Erectus was the first human species to leave Africa, expanding into the Middle East and Southeast Asia along with Europe, living from 2 million years ago, which is the end of this game, to as recently as 140,000 years ago, or possibly even just 35,000 years ago, which makes it the longest living hominin species, living for nearly 2 million years, which is pretty incredible considering our human species has only been around for 200 to 300,000 years. So we're quite young compared to these guys. So the difference from Erectus than other human ancestors, especially the ones that we've been seeing in Volume 1, is that they were a lot larger. They were a lot more closer to our size. They could get up to about 6 feet tall. They ate a lot more meat. They were more prolific hunters. They had bigger brains and were less ape-like than Australopithecines. Now, this reconstruction here I did myself. This was part of the thing that inspired this video. I was doing a sketch and I thought, oh, may as well put that in a nice video. So there it is. Get to show off a little bit of my art. A little bit of plug. So another awesome thing about Erectus is that they were the first species to use complex stone tools, use fire, have language, have some sort of language, even just proto-language, but some sort of more complex communication, and live in hunter-gatherer groups like the San people and other tribal groups that are around the world today. So I'm calling this playful the Erectus Saga, because Erectus had such a huge range across Europe, Middle East, Southeast Asia, and Africa, that a lot of them have, there's a lot of variation within the species because of different populations or even just different individuals. So a lot of the species have been lumped into Erectus as subspecies, which lived in different areas and different parts around the world. So here I made a potential timeline for what the player can go through in game. So here we've got Homo Egaster, which is the one we end with, and is also the earliest Erectus subspecies, which is from Africa, the one that we end the game with, and lives from 2 million to 1.4 million years ago. And then as we move into the Middle East, we have Homo Erectus Georgicus, which is from the Middle East, of course, and was a little bit younger, 1.8 to 1.6 million years ago. And then we have Homo Erectus Erectus, which is from Southeast Asia, which is from 1.6 million years ago to 0.5 million years ago. So it became extinct really about... This subspecies believed to go extinct about 500,000 years ago. And then we have Homo Antecessor, which is Ancestor, I think that's pronounced right, from Europe, which is often made its own species, but for this case I'm just lumping it into Erectus, although there could be the argument made that it's its own species. And it's from Europe and lived in Europe from 1.2 to 0.8 million years ago, and I believe this is a good species to end off, because this kind of like finalizes the progression of Homo Erectus out of its home range. And then we will end finally with Homo heidelbergensis, which is also considered its own species by some, but for this case we've kind of just lumped it into Erectus, because a lot of the fossils that we know is that the type specimen for Homo heidelbergensis is archaic Neanderthal, and the rest of the remains of heidelbergensis are believed to be Erectus, so it might not be a proper species, but for this case, since it's relatively famous, I think we'll add it as a heidelbergensis species, as an end species similar to Egaster in the last game. So now we move on to Erectus Migration. This is basically one of the big mechanics I'm thinking about. All the different areas that you can evolve and unlock as you move through the game. So we'll start out, of course, in Africa with Egaster, and we'll move into the Middle East with Georgicus, and then Southeast Asia with Erectus, and last we'll move into Europe with Antecessor. And then we'll see where the maps lay out. So these maps will be a lot larger than Volume 1. As Erectus was a lot larger and was a long pursuit hunter, it was adapted for pursuit hunting, just like we are. If you see like the Sun's people today, they'll chase down prey in like the middle of the sun. And then when their prey is exhausted, they'll come up and finally deliver the killing blow. Along with the larger herds that these maps support, so there'll be more animals in these maps, there'll be more dynamic herding and such, so we can actually like get the feeling of having to actually think about hunting instead of just holding a QTE button. So the thing to the thing to make each map more unique will be to have each one a different biome with different plants and wildlife that can be used and learned to have different buffs and debuffs similar to the first version. So having each different groups of plants, each can have different buffs and debuffs, and also different animals can different behaviors and meats, and you've got to really learn all that. So that's really keeping with the fun of the game, is all the learning that you have to do to understand the world that you're playing. So I'm also thinking that'll be funded. Each map can have disasters, like some can be like rainstorms that can be all maps, or some can be map specific, like monsoons, rainstorms, fires, things like that. That it can all be affected on each map, so it's different disasters that your group has to deal with. You have to move out, or you have to just try and survive these disasters. So we'll move on to the next one. Here we've got the African map and some species that would live with H.Erectus from the middle and early and middle Pleistocene. So here we have, we believe that the habitats will be around savanna. Like, it's very similar to how it is today with savanna and woodland habitats. So lots of open grassland along with some like loose woodland, so nothing too serious. And there's a lot of different species that I've put in here. For example, there's a giant bear, Angolotherium, African Calithere, a Cynotherium, Dinophilis, which if you've watched the Walking with Beasts episode on H.Erectus, you'll know them, along with Dinophilis. And a lot of species here are quite similar to ones that we have today, like Loxodon Africa, which is just pretty much a giant African elephant that has slightly different teeth. I think it's definitely a different species, but it's definitely more unique by just being a little bit larger. It's like very close relatives to things that we have today, so it wouldn't look, there'd be some new faces, but it wouldn't be very too different from the African savanna we have today. So also we have like a extinct relative of African wild dogs, like in Skawoski, and then similar to the Miocene white rhino, we have Mercenarium as the Pleistocene one, and we also have an extinct relative that's descended from Australopithecines called Palanthropus boisei, which is actually more closely related to Australopithecines, a descendant from them, believed to be their own genus by some people. So I think it'd be really interesting to have another human species running around one map. And then we also have Rugoryx, which is actually discovered quite recently, only a couple of years ago, that's believed to have like a resonating chamber in its face, kind of like a hadrosaur. So that makes it a little bit more unique. Also with Dinopithecus, giant baboons, Paleoloxodon reki, which is like an African version of a straight-tusked elephant, and a lot of other species that even live today, like Nile hippos, hyenas, lions, honey badgers. I spelled it wrong there, but I spelled it right at the times. Doricus griselle, and there's a lot of species that live today that had either different species or close relatives that were living even the same species or close relatives that were living in Africa at the time. So there's a lot of very unique species, especially from Africa, that could be placed in the game to really fill out the maps. So next we'll be moving on to the Middle East. Now the Middle East is mainly different just in terms of habitat, because the habitat that we have here is more deserty, so there'll be a lot more sand. It'd be like the Middle East today, not too different, with some drier grasslands, so not quite as wet as the savannah, a lot less trees and stuff. So one thing is also that the nights can get pretty cold in the desert, so using animal hides and fire will be a good idea to keep yourself warm. And a lot of species from the Africa map will be coming back into this map because they got quite similar fauna, but there's also some new faces as well. So we got Atlantica, the giraffe, a lot of the species, hippos, African lions, a lot of those species will be coming back, along with some new ones like the Merck's rhinoceros, which is like a weird, like a different genus. It's believed to be kind of like a midway between the white and the black rhinos, so it's like an ecology, so it's kind of like a mid-browser, really just a generalist. And then we also have like a Pleistocene camels, ibex and red deer. Hipparion will be returning, along with a couple new Megatherion, which is also coming back, and Homo Erectus, which is like a slight saber-toothed cat, not too closely related to Smilodon, but a little bit different. They're a lot lighter and lived all across Eurasia pretty much. I also have Eurasian wild dogs as well, along with Pecky's Truthio, which was just discovered last year. It's like a giant African ostrich, so we just call it the Pleistocene giant ostrich, and Ecurus, which is another species of elephant that had ridiculously long tusks. So we'll be moving on to Southeast Asia. Now this will be a lot more different than the Africa and Middle East ones, since they'll be a lot more restricted. It'll be a dense rainforest with some open areas, so you have to be more focused on using these areas to try and hunt, and that would provide different challenges than the other two maps. So these a lot of other species are returning, like Homo Erectus, honey badgers, Stephyrhinus, Asian lions, and spotted hyenas were pretty much widespread through this time, all across Asia. Some of these species will just be in every map, surprisingly. And then we're also going to have Gigantopithecus, which is quite famous for being the largest ape. We have giant cheetahs, Pleistocene gibbons, and believe it or not, orangutans were also living in Southeast Asia at the time. They weren't just living in the islands. Also giant tapirs, giant crocodiles. Paleoloxodon nemendez, which is the Asian straight-tusked elephant, which was the largest land mammal known. Probably got even up to 22 tons, so that'd be very, very hard to kill. Along with some other species that are around today, like dholes and even giant pangolins. Extinct Asian giant pangolin. And a lot of species that you'd see today. So we're moving on to the last map. Here we are in Europe. So this is where we end with Antecessor, the last one. So this would be a lot more colder map. It would be like temperate woodlands with scrublands. So it'd be a little bit more similar to the map that's from Southeast Asia, but not quite as dense. So each of these maps will have slightly different terrains or different challenges. So that will affect how you hunt and live in your map. So this is a colder map. Instead of just colder nights, you will need to have animal hides and fire to keep warm. And a lot of species will be turning hippos, but even though hippos lived all over Europe. Cave lions, cave hyenas, Homo Erectus, red deer and fallow deers. Also get the Etruscan wolf and bear, along with European jaguars. And different species, you get two species of mammoth, the southern mammoth and the steppe mammoth, which is also related to the woolly mammoth. It's like the giant early descendant of the woolly mammoth, along with Paleoloxodon antiquus, which is the famous, really robust European straight-tusked elephant. Also some species that you see today, like European ass and wild boar, along with Itideros, bushed antlered deer, which if you played Zoo Tycoon you know who that is, and a lot of extinct species of all close relatives of species today that are just slightly larger, like the broad-faced moose is actually pretty much as large as Megaloceros and is closely related to, obviously, moose. And different like small species for hunting, which I think is pretty interesting. So then the new mechanics that I'm thinking that will be very important to introduce in this game will be hunting, because Homo erectus was a big game hunter believed to be. More complex tools, because we have evidence from what we have in different sites and such of Erectus being able to hunt in make very complex stone tools, and even used fire as well, as early as believed to be like 1.5 million years ago. And group management, so these guys would have been living in slightly bigger groups than our ones today. They'd probably be living in hunter-gatherer societies, so moving around and quite nomadic and hunting what they can, just doing their thing. And so there'd be a little bit more complex language that you need to be able to orientate your hunts and talk with each other, and also encampments, because they'll be building shelters and fires, and you have to be able to move around and do that. So one of the big new mechanics is hunting. So what I'm thinking is that animals will be more complex. So if you played Wolf Quest, you can see like dynamic herding. I'm thinking something like that in the new version. So that some would be moving in herds and packs. So there's a little bit of variation between like maybe some horses and antelope will be moving in big herds. Maybe elephants will live in smaller herds, and some animals like rhinos will be living by themselves. And each species on these maps will have different preferences for different areas. So some X species might like a more open area, where the Y species might like a smaller, more compact area, like living in the woodlands. Or some even like trees, like gibbons and orangutans. So that's just gives you a little bit more variation to where you need to learn to go hunt them. So you need to remember, okay, this species likes going here, so if I want to hunt this species, I need to go here to hunt them. And also different species will animal groups that have different drops that can be used for crafting, like deer and antlers dropping horn, elephants dropping tusks, and carnivores dropping canines, and different things. Each species or each different group can have their own special drops for crafting, along with meat and pelt and bone, which is also important for crafting. So with these expanded group management and language, you need to be able to hunt in groups to take down more difficult prey. So what you'll need to do is have with the language, you'll be able to command other members to do proper hunting. So you'd select them and tell them to do like commands like flank, chase, mimic, dodge, and other commands that can be used depending on the animal you're attacking. So it allows you to like really cooperate as a group to hunt down larger animals. So with these larger, faster animals like antelope, since they're clearly a lot faster than you have to use persistence hunting, which is basically just running them down until they get tired so you can land the final blow. So basically here we'll just have to run them down until they're exhausted. And larger animals will need to be hunted differently, because obviously if you try to attack a rhino by yourself, it'll be very hard to get it down because it's like 20 times your size. So what you really need to do is like try and organize yourself so you can flank it, maybe even have someone distracted while someone puts a spear in it. So you really need to work as a group to try and take down these bigger animals, which of course will give you neural energy, then will further help you evolve. Now one thing that's, once your animal's dead, that doesn't mean all the fight is over. So predators nearby will likely they will be attracted to the kills you made. So if there's like a saber-toothed cat or a wolf pack nearby, they'll smell out your prey and then they'll try and come and see if they can steal it off you. So you and your group may need to defend your kill, and the larger the kill, the more likely other predators will come. So if you've killed like a elephant, there'll be a lot of animals coming to see if they can steal some food. And then one thing that's also, if there's enough of you, you can also go and try and steal kills from other animals. But if you don't have enough numbers, they'll attack you and you might have to retreat, and you could potentially even lose members of your clan. So I think that's like a really nice expansion to hunting. So let's move on to the next one. So new tools. So Homo Erectus was known for making stone tools with different uses, from hand axes to stone cleavers. Erectus was also known as the first human to use fire, and some believe that Erectus may have made rafts, but it's very speculative. But that would be a cool little mechanic to try and get around areas that are like big lakes or something like that. So here's some stone tools. There's what we have from the fossil record is quite a rich diversity actually of stone tools and quite a history. So there could be a quite interesting crafting tree. So we can generally improve like a progressive. So you eventually have these pretty basic old one tools, and then you progress more and more into these Austrian tools, and they can be made from different types of stone like granite, obsidian, and basalt, similar to in the first game, and with different varying ability of like effectiveness and hardiness. So there's all these different tool types. You can see like these quite complex hand axes here. You can see like this one here. You can see the progression over time of how more complicated these hand axes and tools became. So that creates a very interesting tree. So you see here we can have these big hand axes that are used to kill and butcher prey. We can also use flake tools, which are basically early knives, and an early version of stone cleavers. So stone cleavers are like a more upgraded version of the flake tools. So they're more efficient at cutting meat. And we got stone anvils, which are going to be very important because you'll need these to make tools. And bone anvils will be used to make more refined tools. That's something that will be coming in the later game. One thing is that horn needles will be good to manipulate animal skins and can be made from deer and antelope horns. So that's very important to be able to survive in cooler maps. So you need fire. If you don't have fire, you can use animal pelts, or if you need to go, especially in Europe, you might really need these animal skins to try and protect you from the cold. And flint's also very good because it can be used to start fires. So you'll be able to start fires in your camp, or start fires or for torches and such, which I'll get into soon. So one thing that was also, there's no evidence directly that Homo erectus had spears, but they do definitely have the anatomy to throw a spear. So I think, and also that we have sharpened sticks in the Volume 1, it might be a good idea to add wooden spears in this game. So similar to the sharpened sticks, but more complex with stone trip upgrades, so you have different upgrades. And then Erectus is believed to be able to throw spears, which adds a long-range weapon, which can be used to hit animals running away or keep your distance between you and a dangerous animal. So if you're hunting an elephant, you're able to attack it without directly going up and going in range where it can hit you. So it keeps you a distance away from predators or big dangerous game. And as you hunt and learn more, you can usually like target these areas, so there'd be hitboxes. So like if you hit the chest or the neck with a spear, the animal will die quickly or quicker, versus when you hit it just in the side or something like that. So as you learn more and more and hunt more and more, you become more efficient in picking out the weak spots and able to target them better. So that adds more progression to the wooden spears to hunting. So fire. Erectus was believed to be the first human species to use fire, using it for cooking and to stay warm. So once you learn how to make fire, you can use flint to make your own fires. So campfires can be made from sticks and rocks and are a replaceable item within your camp. So we believe that we could have camps where we can use to for both warmth and food. So campfires give you and other humans around you a cold buff, which is used for on cool nights and colder climates like Europe. So that means if you hang around the fire, you won't get as cold, and you'll be more resistant to cold. And placing meat and other foods on your fire cooks the item, so that means you will be able to put food and meat on that, and that cooked item will be able to fill your energy faster, so you'll have more energy from cooked food. Even though it might take a little longer, it's more efficient. And placing a stick into the fire will create a torch, which can be used to see in the dark, so if you want to go exploring at night, it's quite useful. And in darker areas, and with you can use fire, because all animals are pretty much scared of fire. You can use fire to scare away dangerous predators from your camp or anywhere near you. So then one also thing is it's really going to improve is group management. So Erectus was most likely the first hominin to live in hunter-gatherers groups, which basically just collecting what they can from the environment, be it hunting and collecting plants and such. So the group varies in size depending on your competence, of course, but usually they can get up to quite big. They're not very much larger than a few dozen people, so probably no more than 50 to 100. So I don't think there'll be that many a game, but it should be enough to really make it feel like a hunter-gatherer society. So there'll be different families and such working together to protect the group and collect food to provide for each other. So clan members that are not hunting or moving with you will be hanging around your camp, which will also be looking for berries and small animals to eat, which will be brought back to camp and be shared with everyone. So even if you come back from a hunting trip and you're not successful, you will be able to grab your some sort of food and be able to replenish it. It shouldn't be much, but it can keep you from dying. Makes it a little bit easier. So that helps you survive and manage to get back some food. So one also thing is that the group will also have a morale meter, which brings more valuable foods. When you bring more valuable foods like meats and rare materials for crafting, and everyone's happy and healthy, you'll be able to increase your morale. But then if there's like people are starving and dehydrated, or members are dying, it'll go down. So it's something that I think that adds like a bit more management to having to stick around your group, because really in the old game you would basically go away from a group, they would all starve and dehydrate if you weren't there, because they couldn't even drink or eat by themselves, which is a little bit stupid. But here they actually kind of adds an actual mechanic to it, because if there are clan members dying or starving, that's going to be good on morale. And there's other groups of your species that can be found on the map which compete with you with food, and you would either need to scare them off, move to other areas that there's no Erectus there, so you're able to collect your own food, or you can even go to war, which is the most dangerous option and could cost members of your group, but if you win, that means you get all the resources. So it's obviously probably risk and reward analysis to see whether it's worth it to the player. So one thing is also language. With Erectus living and hunting in more complex groups, proto-language started to emerge, making organized hunting and society possible. The more often you work and hunt with your group, you can learn new commands and words through the neural tree, so there'll be another upgrade thing. So the more you talk and the more you hunt and do stuff with your group, you'll be able to increase your commands and be able to tell them what to do, like a Mimic, similar to that game, the Mimic, that'll just be more expanded, and which can be used for direct hunting parties in your group when you're moving to new areas, so that when you move around you can take your group and move them to somewhere else. So the direct a particular human, you can highlight them and then use the command, allowing them to particularly select what hominin you want to give the command to. So it's a bit more specific, so you can tell hominin here, okay, I want you to flank this antelope, and they'll do it. So it kind of creates a bit more agency when you hunt, and makes actually hunting with other people useful. So also the thing is the encampment. With Erectus' nomadic nature, you'll need to set up different camps around the map, similar to how you would in Volume 1. So the caves would just be very good natural shelter, but with no effort with materials, but are far and scattered throughout the map, so you won't be able to find these caves everywhere. And that means they'll be probably on the edges and maps, so you have to really move around the map to get to places you want. So beds can also be made to sleep in, but have little protection against the elements. So if you just put your bed in the middle of a open savanna, that won't protect you from much. So using sticks and animal hides, you can make shelters once you learn it, so that can provide you and your clan protection. So if you have enough, you can build a big shelter and then just let everyone pile in. So other items that can be made from your camp and campfires are barriers, similar to in the first game where you can keep them out, and basic animal hide covers, which can provide some protection from the elements, which I said before, creating very basic hides just to keep heat in or slightly protect from attacks. So once you get attacked, it'll become ripped, and that means it'll be unusable. So one thing is cool, I thought of a little end game unlock. So we'll end the game with once we've done the full game, it's a little unlocked. There's like an achievement. Yeah, you did it. Is Flores. Now, home to the dwarf human Homo Erectus, or the Hobbit. It stood a little over a meter tall and was believed to be a relative of Erectus, or Homo habilis, that got stranded on the island of Flores of Indonesia, and which lived from 190,000 to 12,000 years ago. So it'll just be like a little dip in time, but it'll be separate from the rest of human evolution going on. So these humans would have been believed to have tools similar to Erectus, and would have been better climbers. So that could be another mechanic that makes Homo Erectus unique, is being able to climb better, and could be a light callback to Volume 1. Now the thing I think really makes Erectus unique is the stuff that lived to him, or Floresiensis, not Erectus. So Flores was home to some weird fauna like giant rats, dwarf stegodons, Komodo dragons, and giant marabou storks. So I think they'd be really interesting in terms of fauna. So it kind of gives everyone a really unique map to play on. Pretty different from everything else. So. and plus you're pretty small as well, so it gives you like an island map to play on, which I think would be pretty interesting. So I think these are some of the in-game improvements I'd like to see. I'd like to see like Volume 2 will have like a more XP based system, so instead of these feats that you kind of collect once and then that's all you get, I'd rather have something that's XP based, so the more times you do something, the more XP you get. So you don't just discover one thing, get it, and then, or if you kill an animal once and then you kill it another and don't get anything for killing it the next like 30 times. So it's an XP system, so like killing something might give you a little bit of XP, doing something, and it's obviously ranked of course. So it's more similar to what you'd see in normal games. So each time you do an action you get XP, and it stops the late game from being a rush to complete feats, because that's really like the last 10 hours of the game. You're just running around trying to collect things that you can do to get time. Another thing, humans in the tribes could actually take care of themselves, because as I mentioned, obviously when you're not around, your clan members will often just starve or get dehydrated. So it'd be really interesting to have them to be able to take care of themselves when you're off hunting. So this kind of gets rid of the babysitting that you need to do, but you still need to manage them around. So I think one thing that would really benefit is a short tutorial teaching the very basics of how to hunt, similar to like the climbing. Because the tutorial in the game is obviously very short and only tells you the very basics, but hunting I think is more complicated than that. So I think it'd be interesting to maybe start the game with like a couple of Egaster hunting something, and then that's the tutorial that you need. That even could be a little story similar to how in Volume 1 there's the story of you climbing up to grab your sibling or grab a member of your tribe. Something similar to that to help introduce you into some of the game's mechanics. So I think there's also just like a lot of quality of life improvements, like bug fixes and being able to view menus not from just your beds, like the evolution menu. I thought that was pretty annoying. Be able to view it just generally, so you can do it on the fly instead of having to go all the way to your camp to evolve or sit in your bed. I think that's something that would be very cool to see in the next game. But other than that, I think that's about it. That's what I can think of. So hopefully guys, thank you for watching. Hopefully you guys like and subscribe, and bye bye.